Do you ever play a game and wonder how it shipped in the state it did? It's unfortunately pretty dang common. Game development is hard, but these games were so bad that they had to get yeeted from existence, never to be played again. It's not like anybody misses them, but still. Well, apart from one game, but we'll get to that. From the catastrophic failure of Cyberpunk 2077 at launch to Fntastic, stupid name, stupid people, trying to pull off the scam of the decade with the day before, in this list we'll be counting down games that were so bad that they had to be recalled, delisted, and left alone as a tale for the history books. But first, do you want to win yourself a free Steam key? All you have to do is comment 31k gang down below and we'll draw a winner next Friday. Number 10, Overkill's The Walking Dead. After the wild success of Payday 2, Overkill Software wasted no time announcing its next venture, The Walking Dead. The co-op first-person shooter was announced in 2014 for a 2016 release window, but was pushed back into 2018. Being held back by 2 years, you'd think Overkill would create one of the better multiplayer survival horror games of all time, or at least in the last 6 months, but the final product was incredibly mediocre. A lackluster shooter with repetitive mission design, outdated graphics, and bland co-op. And that's still not counting the many bugs it had. Enemies would occasionally glitch through walls, NPCs would become frozen, forcing you to load an earlier save, and sometimes the game would get a black screen for no reason at all. Calling Overkill's The Walking Dead a dull and technically frustrating game would be putting it lightly. Now, normally that would slide in today's day and age where hundreds of similar games are released all year round, but the hype and excitement for Overkill's The Walking Dead was so much that it ended up being a double-edged sword. Perhaps surprisingly considering how bad the IP's adaptations have gotten today, The Walking Dead's creators and licensing company, Skybound Entertainment, didn't like how Overkill tarnished their franchise's reputation, even if they still stand by the even worse destinies. Oh boy, that's a humdinger. I'd love to do a video on that. Do you want to see that? Let us know down below. Skybound Entertainment terminated their licensing deal for the game, and this resulted in Overkill's The Walking Dead being delisted from Steam and the console versions being cancelled. Overkill and their parent company Starbreeze Entertainment went bankrupt and underwent restructuring for over a year, while the accursed The Walking Dead game would end up being forgotten in the annals of history. Hey, at least they learnt their lessons, right? Right? Oh dear. Number 9, Popeye 2021. I mean, that's the problem right there, isn't it? A Popeye game in 2021. Spinach isn't even real anymore, guys. Nobody's eaten spinach in about 80 years, guys. After Donkey Kong introduced the world to the platformer genre in 1981, the 1982 Popeye game was what took the formula a tad bit further. Many held Popeye as another momentous arcade game, and to this day, whenever people reminisce on it, they always have good things to say. In comparison, the 2021 Popeye remake by Sabec Limited for the Switch was nothing but a dang travesty. The game spanned only 3 levels in which the players as Popeye had to collect hearts and letters thrown by Olive Oil, all while avoiding getting mugged by Bluto. Sounds like a faithful adaptation, but for some reason the levels were made endless, completely ruining the design of the original. The 3 levels were bare bones on top of that, and running around in circles chasing a high score that's not even shared online was like a drug/spinach-fueled nightmare. In name, it was a 3D remake of the 1982 classic. But in reality, Popeye 2021 seemed more like a game the team concocted over the weekend with pre-made assets and slapped a $12.99 price tag on to make an easy buck. Just to lay it out there, you can get one of the best indie games of all time, Hades, on Steam for less. Popeye 2021 was declared an insult to the fan favourite character. Luckily, the game was delisted from the Switch in 2023 out of the blue. Some sources cite the Popeye license for Sabec expiring, though whatever may be the case, it's a miracle nobody will have to live through it anymore. We're safe now. We're safe. Number 8, Wonder. Wonder is the only game in this list that didn't exactly make players feel scammed, though it was still very much an awful arse game. It was developed by a small indie team called Wonder, which is kinda weird but alright, as a non-combat and non-competitive MMO exploration game. Players would embody a tree, discovering supposedly breathtaking new locations as they wandered the world in search of answers. The environment and soothing melodies were the game in Wonder. However, pretty much just that will only get you so far. Wonder was just too shallow to stand on its own 2 feet. Walking for hours on end in a game devoid of any other mechanic wasn't exactly relaxing. On the contrary, it was just kind of frustrating really. While good in concept, Wonder lacked the execution. Unlike Journey and Soma, games that can be considered pacifist but still have much for you to do, Wonder didn't have any single feature apart from walking that could really be seen as a positive. I mean, I like walking, but in a game where it's not really stopping my heart from exploding. And even the set pieces were incomplete. Wildlife was missing, yet you'd hear sounds of animals nearby. On the other hand, Wonder was buggy beyond belief. One moment you're walking in the jungle and the next you're under the map. Wonder failed to find an audience at all, and to make matters worse, the developers had an internal disagreement with Crytek regarding the use of the CryEngine. The dispute resulted in Wonder being removed from sale, and shortly after, the development team disbanded. Wonder was terrible technically, but well, if by chance it sounds like you missed out on a good walking sim, might we suggest you try out Death Stranding instead? Bonus, Conan is in it. Wonder didn't have Conan, and that's why it failed. Number 7, Afro Samurai 2, Revenge of Kuma, Volume 1. After the successful launch of Afro Samurai in 2009, preparations were underway for the sequel. However, the game's producer David Robinson left Bandai Namco, and in an interview with Polygon, he stated he was able to secure the rights to the sequel that he plans on making after forming his own studio. David's newly founded Redacted Studios would then make Afro Samurai 2, and Versus Evil served as the publisher for the release. With an entirely new team working on Afro Samurai 2, prospects didn't seem bright from the get-go, and when the game was finally released it was a new level of bad. Afro Samurai 2 Revenge of Kuma Volume 1 was named among the worst games of 2015 by various publications. It was panned by critics and users alike, with some going as far as to describe Afro Samurai 2 as a technical mess of hot garbage. Anyone who sat down to play Afro Samurai 2 would feel the same way. The sequel was a disappointment and a massive step down on a technical and artistic level. By the time the storm had calmed down a bit, Afro Samurai 2 Revenge of Kuma was drowning in reviews of 1s and 2s. Versus Evil felt humiliated, and without notice they delisted the game and issued refunds to every single person who had purchased the game. Plans for making this into a trilogy were also killed right after. In an interview with CG Magazine that was conducted sometime later, Versus Evil's general manager addressed the refunds and the situation as a whole. He cleared up the air by stating, "The game was a failure. We could not do in good conscience Volume 2 and 3. Afro Samurai 2 may have been a disaster piece, but at least the publishers owned up to their mistake, just like this next one." Number 6, Cyberpunk 2077. Ever heard of this one? Anyone? Anyone at all? Once praise for The Witcher 3 had calmed down, all eyes were on Cyberpunk 2077, the next action role-playing game from CD Projekt Red, which the studio had already announced back in 2012. The pressure was on, but from the gameplay trailers at E3 2018 and 2019, it looked as if CDPR was working its magic yet again. A release date for April 2020 was set and pre-orders were hitting the millions. But then the delays started happening. Whenever we were about a month or two off from release day, CD Projekt Red would apologise on its socials and delay the game on the grounds that it needed more polish. When Cyberpunk 2077 eventually did launch in December 2020, CD Projekt Red left minds blown once again, though not in the way you might have expected. Vanilla Cyberpunk 2077 was absolutely broken. NPCs would not load or have any signs of artificial intelligence at all, the game would crash every 5 minutes, and the textures, hell, even the basic physics such as bullet impact were missing, which was ironic given this was a first-person shooter. Cyberpunk 2077 was in a state of chaos, and its release left millions of players worldwide mad and outgunning for refunds. Cyberpunk 2077 was so awful that less than a month after launching, it was delisted from the PlayStation Store, while Xbox was issuing refunds left and right. The action RPG would return to consoles 6 months later, overhauled with hundreds of improvements, yet still years away from the polish and quality expected of the creators of The Witcher 3. But despite the rightful criticism, CDPR chose to stick by the mistake, supporting Cyberpunk with updates for 3 years. With the launch of Phantom Liberty, Cyberpunk is now close to the game it always should have been. Today, Cyberpunk can be considered one of the greatest games ever made, though it's safe to say that nobody will be pre-ordering the in-development sequel. Right, guys? Right. Number 5, Babylon's Fall. And oh boy did it. For the most part, Platinum Games' track record is almost spotless. But one of their major blemishes is called Babylon's Fall, an action RPG that was unfortunately more Avengers than Elden Ring. You could say it was Platinum Games' ambitions that killed Babylon's Fall. Unlike the single-player formula in Nier and Bayonetta, which the studio was known for, Platinum Games went for an always-online live service approach in Babylon's Fall. Why did they do that? I still don't know why they did that. The weak, kind of boring story, tedious hack-and-slash combat, and repetitive environments did no favours for the game either. Babylon's Fall debuted to a peak player count of only 1,188 plays on Steam, becoming a commercial failure pretty much instantly. Platinum did offer free updates to support the game, but within a month the player count had dwindled to below 100. Babylon's Fall was dead on arrival, and with it showing absolutely no signs of ever recuperating, publisher Square Enix and Platinum Games axed it 6 months after release. Babylon's Fall was delisted from both PlayStation and PC by the end of 2022, while servers were officially shut down in February the following year. Babylon's Fall was simply an awful, boring, awful game, and considering its disastrous life, Platinum likely won't be dipping its toes into live service so soon again. Oh, they're doubling down.
I'm telling you, don't back down, double down.
Number 4, 1000 top rated. It's not for everyone, but I love collecting platinum trophies when I have the time. It's basically the biggest stamp of approval and respect you can give to a video game. But this was just a joke. 1000 Top Rated was marketed as the easiest puzzle game on PlayStation that would net you a previously prestigious platinum trophy in only a matter of minutes. While it's not known how many people played it in 2017 before it was taken down within 36 hours of launch, a reported 94% of the player base did snag the platinum. This was bonkers news when you realise only about 5% or so of players achieve a platinum in most games. As you might be able to imagine, there was barely any content in 1000 Top Rated to begin with. The puzzles were literally just images split into pieces which players had to arrange in the right order. It was as easy as it gets, and as per the internet, now you could buy trophies on PlayStation. Sony somewhat promptly delisted 1000 Top Rated, and in a post made by the developer, Sony wanted them to change the name of the game as well as any mentions of trophies and how easy it was to get them. Months went by and 1000 Top Rated did not resurface. The game's official page on the PlayStation website was also removed, and in another post made by Top Rated, the studio enigmatically implied that 1000 Top Rated wouldn't ever be coming back. On to the next platinum, I suppose. Number 3, Crossfire X. Listen, I am just still not convinced that Remedy didn't do this as some kind of money laundering thing. Crossfire X was a free-to-play multiplayer game from Smilegate Entertainment for the Xbox One and Xbox Series. Unfortunately, unlike the wildly popular Crossfire from 2007, which has made the developer over 10 billion smackaroonies to date, their 2022 franchise spin-off has made a name for itself as the worst in the series. Both the purchasable single-player mode made by Remedy of Alan Wake fame and the free-to-play multiplayer mode were plagued with countless issues. The campaign had a generic story, awful UI design, and was riddled with bugs, whereas the multiplayer mode, as well as the game as a whole, looked like crap. Crossfire X made vanilla Battlefield 2042 seem like a masterpiece, and if you have played vanilla Battlefield 2042, it was the furthest thing from a masterpiece. Okay, scratch that, it was a masterpiece actually, it was. Everything went downhill for Crossfire X once it was out, and the reviews were the final nail in the coffin for any hope of recovery. Crossfire X was a huge misfire, and Smilegate decided it'd be better to delist it rather than let new players discover it and contribute to the already massive pile of hate mail. Well, we don't know about it really, most people are just completely apathetic to it. Did you even know it was a thing? Let us know down below. Smilegate officially ended all support for Crossfire X on May 18th, 2023, and everything from the multiplayer to the single player campaign was rendered unplayable. While we're pretty big on preservation here at Cultured Vultures, it says a lot that even we struggle to give too much of a shit. To the culling 2.
This is Chaz saying so long for the culling.
Really, you could fill this list with bad Battle Royale games, but let's just go with this one. Amid the Battle Royale fever of the late 2010s, one studio by the name of Xaviant created a first-person action game in 2017 to capitalise on the genre, and was one of the first to release two. The culling wasn't all that bad, but with PUBG and Fortnite trapping the world in a chokehold, everyone quickly forgot about Xaviant's melee-based offering. In an attempt to get back in on the action, Xaviant would announce, develop and release a sequel, The Culling 2, all within 9 months. With great AAA games taking a minimum of 4 to 5 years in the oven, you can imagine the kind of work Xaviant had put in with The Culling 2. The game was a clone of PUBG and an extremely poor one at that. Everything from the gunplay and map design to the graphics felt like a rip-off of PUBG. To make matters worse, servers were endlessly disconnecting, and if you did manage to connect to a game, you'd automatically win since no one else was in the match. The situation was pretty dire. Within 8 days, Xaviant announced that they would be delisting The Culling 2 from all supported platforms. Refunds were issued out and the game was effectively buried faster than it was developed. Oh, you thought they were done making bad decisions? Wrong! Xaviant would later fumble again by ruining their moderately successful run with The Culling by making it a pay-per-match game. And that went about as well as you would imagine. Ultimately, because of the backlash, Xaviant took a tumble from which it wasn't ever able to recover. They haven't been seen since. Here's hoping we never see these next guys ever again. Number 1. The Day Before. Ugh. The Day Before was hyped up by developer Fntastic as a real breakthrough for the MMO survival genre, and the stunning announcement trailer at E3 2021 had convinced a lot of people. More trailers would follow suit in the coming months, and they showcased highly decorated interiors and some beautiful graphics. The gameplay, on the other hand, looked unrefined, but since the game was still under development, everyone was willing to let that slide. But who could have known that this was false advertising happening on the grandest scale? Well, everyone who was a bit cynical. Yeah, fair enough. Reflecting on these earlier trailers now, it's obvious Fntastic just wanted to generate internet clout for their game before they tried a big old scam. The Day Before was delayed multiple times before it eventually came out on Steam in December 2023. In the period leading up to the release, Fntastic gave us another look at the zombie survivals game, and oh boy, was it rough. Contrary to what was shown 2 years prior, the gameplay trailer of 2023 seemed like it was from a completely different game. graphics had been downgraded severely, the open world was devoid of zombies making combat non-existent, and the game just felt lifeless. Millions were looking forward to how things would turn out. Nearing release day, it seemed as if The Day Before would simply be a dull game with generic missions, but somehow it was worse than anyone could have imagined. I mean, it wasn't even an MMO. The Day Before's launch build was riddled with game-breaking glitches, and it would either crash every few minutes or you would have to restart the entire game. There was a meaningless progression system, almost no incentive to explore the monotonous empty sandboxes, and survival felt like a chore more than a requirement, which is the exact opposite of how a post-apocalyptic zombie game should feel. And the best part was you could get all this for the low price of 40 bones on Steam. The Day Before gave the impression of being a side project the developers cooked up over the past few months rather than something they had been tirelessly working on for 5 years. It was roundly rated as the worst game of 2023 and by some as the biggest scam in video game history. Fntastic was bombarded with hate and The Day Before's player count dipped hard. Only 4 days after launch, The Day Before would be removed from sale on Steam. Fntastic would address the situation on Twitter by stating that The Day Before has failed financially and we lack the funds to continue. All income received is being used to pay off debts to our partners. Because of the hype it had, The Day Before sold 200,000 copies on Steam during the time it was still up. However, the publisher Mytona offered refunds to all users, saving face for what could have been one of the biggest scams in gaming history. Today, Fntastic is officially defunct, and The Day Before remains unplayable. Its release was definitely a pretty wild thing to be a part of, but luckily the atrocity was delisted, and in the aftermath, people who bought it had only lost a couple of hours of their life, and hopefully a whole bunch of trust in random ass trailers. Just remember this lesson the next time these two dudes try to sell you a video game. And there you have it, there are some games that were so bad that they were deleted. Any that we missed? Which other games should have been yeeted from the public consciousness? Be sure to let us know down in the comments down below. I've been Jimmy for Cultured Vultures, and thank you for watching.